I see a Budweiser. Go ahead and hold it up.
Yes.
That was the biggest clue.
Yes, right
Doing
there.
it for Dale.
Man, it's so many gimmicks, right? I feel like they're making it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, a lot of people, you get polarizing opinions on DRS.
I know you guys know exactly what I'm talking about here, but sometimes the effort, it's all about the boys. You know, like, hey, you know, life sucks sometimes, and you
Yes.
boys.
iRacing kind of always has a tendency to kind of buff
Yes.
the new cars just a little bit. I'm not going to go on record saying it's because they want people to spend money on their platform and buy all the new
Conspiracy
content.
confirmed.
But
Yes.
but
We are live for the first time on slow motion broadcasting with the FF Weekend Warriors. We're at Sebring this weekend. It's going to be a blast. I saw a little bit of rain here in the practice session, but we'll get to that here in 1 second. My name is Adam Thompson. I'm joined in the booth by Randall McGrew.
With these three going right at it, we see you're getting really, really squirrely. There,
Oh, no!
Some contact. Oh no! Jurg and Antonio, the two Masters leaders, both with issues and now dropping down the order.
There's a dicing through the curbs. Our lead two. As that's Instaman just slossing it up the inside through McIntyre there. Beautifully done by the Icelandic driver as there's a big incident happened behind somewhere. Gonzaga losing a lot of places back.
Almost touching at that point. They're around there, heading into the closing stages of the track. Not quite there yet. Heading through what I'm calling the horseshoe, but let's not get into my drawing skills at this point. Nothing but clear track ahead of them at this point, so no one should be able to interfere in that battle. Side by side, nearly had contact there. That's going to put Kabanka on the inside for this next hairpin. This could be what decides it, and he's gone right on the outside, actually trying to cover off the car. I do wonder if Barry is going to be close enough to potentially slipstream. They've got 2 corners left to go. This is penultimate one now. Barry right up close, 0.3 of a second. I'm not sure it's going to be close enough, 0.2 of a second. He's got to keep his foot on that loud pedal, catches a little bit of a curve, but has Kabanga done it? Barry going to the inside, and Kabanga gets it.
Well, hello and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Slow Motion Broadcasting, and welcome back to the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors. This is round number 12 of the season, coming to you today from Zandvoort. My name is Ron Maunz. Alongside me, working the comms and the cams, is Daniel Zippy Salmon. And as Zippy, we're here for the second to last race of this season, and what a season it's been thus far. It's a season that's had it all in terms of racing action and the racetracks we visited, but now we're heading to one of the oddest. Zandvoort is always an awesome track. It's got some brilliant corners shoehorned into it, and ever since F1 revamped this place back in 2020, it's one of my personal favorite tracks on the Formula 1 calendar. But Zandvoort, it's a known quantity, but we've got a shoehorn chicane in between while the longest flat-out blast around this racetrack, which is certainly going to be an oddball for these drivers to try and tackle. So I think, honestly, this is going to be one of the biggest what-if races heading into the season. What do you think?
I think it's going to be an absolute belter, honestly, Ron. Like, I'm really looking forward to it, not just because, honestly, I have so much love for this Weekend Warriors community. Like, just, I get teary-eyed every time I think about it, and I feel like I'm comfortable where I'm at in the world, but you know, it's just one of those things that's just, I'm so grateful that we have these guys here on SMB. And then I got to say as well, you know, Jim Brewster, he puts in a lot of work with the points and stuff like that. I've just realized it was the Formula V points I've copied over, but there's basically, to summarize, there is a lot of championships on the line right now. Don't get me wrong, Wilkie's doing pretty well. Actually, I'll tell you what, Ron, speaking of championships, let's take a quick peek at that if you'd like to do the honors, sir.
Yeah, let's go through the championship points, because these battles in all three of the classes that we have been fantastic to follow all season long. And it's reigning Spec 1 champion James Berry leading it with only 2 more races left to go this season, finds himself at a pretty big cushion. That's what, 66 points between himself and Michael McConnell in P2. So Barry looking to try and grab 2 straight Spec 1 championships here in the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors. Jason Green in third, a little bit farther back of Michael McConnell. I say a little bit farther back. Not a whole lot of points at all between those two racers. The same could be said about Ian Joyner and Kevin Adrian, who are only separated by 10 points running at your top 5 as it stands at the moment in the Spec 1 standings. Lots of fantastic storylines to follow in that class. The same can be said about Spec 2, and now our SMB colleague Josh Wilkie has been dominant all throughout this season. We say that very hesitantly. Knowing my luck, I may have just jinxed him. He's going to get struck by a falling anvil at some point in the 40-minute race we have coming up today. Both 711 points on the table. He has as many points as it stands at the moment as Michael McConnell does in the Spec 1 class. So Wilkie has been fantastic to follow all throughout this season. Won in the Spec 2 category the last time out at Rodskogan and finds himself at a pretty big cushion between himself and Bill Walker. Those two effectively in no man's land compared to their competitors, as you have to go back over 100 points to Paul Jackson in P3, Andrew Love and Daniel Verone rounding out your top 5 in the Spec 2 category. So that's pretty spread out. And I think the same can kind of be said about the Masters class here. Jorg Mani, he had a little bit of tough times all throughout this season, but by and large, he's been the most consistent force all throughout this season. Finds himself in the championship lead, 689 points on the table at the moment. Have to go back, that'd be, what, 81 points to Brad Cathcart? My public school math is really getting tested here at this point in time. But Brad Cathcart, the Aussie, in P2, Jim Brewster, Stevie Ray, and Gary Wobold running at your top 5 in the Masters category. So that's the championship points heading into the final 2 races of this Formula Ford Weekend Warriors season, a season which has been chock full of very interesting events, this one certainly being no exception as qualifying is now going on at the moment. Seeing some of these racers go on, and as we just saw in the Spec 1 standings, really all the point standings as well, it's the championship leaders and all of them, Barry in Spec 1, Monty in Masters, and Wilkie in Spec 2. They're all running in their respective polls for the class, so very fitting, seeing the results that we have right now in qualifying.
Oh, absolutely, and you can see there Jorg's got a pretty wicked draft off the guy ahead of him. I'll be honest, I'm not too sure who is ahead of him right now, but we're going to actually steal Jorg for a minute. We're going to do this guided lap if you'd like to do the honors there, Ron.
Yes, I certainly will, giving a lap guide around this racetrack. Historic in nature, but fun to drive. That was turn 1 that we just saw Jorg Mani go through. Good overtaking opportunity. This is a tricky section. That's turn number 2. Now into one of the revamped corners that Formula 1 changed up, added in a crap load of banking through turn number 3. That's Hugenholtz corner through turn 3 right now. Now going back up the hill through this winding section, this flat out blast, but it's being interrupted by this chicane. Not even numbered by iRacing. It gets used so infrequently. That's still going to be a real interesting section, especially on lap 1. That is going to be a really intriguing ride following some of those drivers through that section. That's turn number 7 that we just saw Monty go through right now, getting spat out onto some of the curbs, heading through into turn number 8 right now. That's one of the trickiest corners on this racetrack, at least as far as I'm concerned. So tricky is turn number 9 as well. This section may be one of the hardest around this racetrack as far as I'm concerned, just based off my experience. The past 3 corners have been really, really tricky. This one being the hardest. Turn 10, the hairpin, the CM.com turn. Not even sure what CM is. Hopefully it's not a website selling any illicit things that we cannot mention here on SMB, but that's turn 10. Such a tricky corner to try and get right. Here's a Hans Earth chicane, a real tough section as well. Got that elevation change kind of affecting you as a car falls away. The grip changes wildly from basically foot to foot of asphalt. Now heading through turn number 13, the final real corner around this racetrack, heading through now turn number 14. Ari Line-Dyke curb, banked like the Indianapolis Motor Speedway that Ari Line-Dyke won 2 Indy 500s in back in 1990 and 1997. But that's a lap around Zandvoort, a wonderful ride in the world of racing. And let's see, it is an improvement from Monty, but he's not going to jump in front of James Barry. And you know, there may be a little bit of a preconceived notion of bad Masters drivers. The fact they're a little bit up there in biological age, but I'll tell you what, some of those Masters drivers, they may have high biological ages, but I'll tell you what, Zippy, on the racetrack, they're battling with guys half or a third of their age like there is no going back. Monty, he's quick in this series. Antonio Rizzo are following right now, another quick driver. They're slotted in 2nd and 4th at the moment overall, battling some really fast drivers in this series. I mean, it's fitting though, because they're fast drivers themselves.
Oh, absolutely. And I got to say it as well. Don't knock these guys just because they're old. Like, I was speaking to Jorg a little bit yesterday, and he's telling me I think he's like 14 years or 21 years or something. I'd have to double check. But an insane amount of time since he's had to go and see a doctor. And I don't know exactly what kind of diet, health regime he's on. Maybe it's just where he lives. But, you know, that's absolutely incredible. So for a more seasoned gentleman, like... I mean, they say that with age comes wisdom, and certainly, you know what, he drives incredibly fast. He's obviously incredibly healthy. Like, I could learn a lot from this man. So, Jorg, I've got to say, if you start doing, like, releasing these videos, these fitness videos, I'm sorry, I'm signing up for that. Like, that's worth it all day long. But the biggest reason I got the camera on Antonio Reese right now, obviously himself and Jorg, really, really good friends, and really, really good rivals as well. So it's good to see them out there. Here's another guy I want to keep an eye on. Certainly in the wet last time round, he was an absolute machine. I don't generally pick myself a driver of the show kind of deal, but for me, he just absolutely blew me away with his talent. So I'm going to be interested to see what Kevin Adrian can do today in these drier conditions. But we can't help but not mention this guy here. Now, Ron, I feel you should do this one, because if not, I'm gonna overdo it. So give us some thoughts on how Wilkie's going to be doing today.
Oh, I mean, Josh, it's kind of odd, so to speak, to kind of talk about him in all different contexts. I used to just talk about him as a producer on some broadcast that I was on, then got the chance to talk about him as a driver on the racetrack, got to talk about him as a co-commentator with the Saturday Formula V Weekend Warriors broadcast and the Wednesday Ray Esports Club Racing broadcast, all of which you can catch here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. But Josh, he has been incredibly impressive all throughout this season. We'll see later on with the Spec Racer Fords that, considering Randall McGrew is out of town, I believe, today, you'll be hearing me on later on. May God have mercy on the viewers' souls. But Wilkie, he's been pretty quick all throughout this season. He's been pretty, ever since he joined the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors, which was a couple of seasons ago. I remember with a different broadcaster that we will not mention by name, he was usually the producer for these Formula Ford Weekend Warriors shows. Then when things happened and the Weekend Warriors moved over to SMB, where I got to say the shows have gone a whole lot better and a lot more personal, a lot more entertaining as well, Wilkie made that transition from the virtual production hauler to get behind the wheel, and ever since then he's been slowly whittling away at it. Ever since he got into the Weekend Warriors series, he's been slowly getting better. Last season, if my memory serves me correctly, he was oh so close to winning the Spec 2 championship, but here, heading into the final two races of these Formula Fords, he finds himself in a really good position, finds himself in a good spot as well in this qualifying session, slotted 7th with the checkered flag out. You have to go back to 15th with Andrew Love to find the next closest Spec 2 man. So Wilkie, pretty fast at this point in time. So he's probably been the most impressive driver to follow throughout this season, and we're definitely not biased since he's one of our SMB colleagues.
Oh, absolutely not. And honestly, when it comes to doing these shows, guys, we do try to make sure we don't focus on an SMB a bit too much. Don't get me wrong, if that's where the action's happening, well, we don't want to deprive you of that either. But right now, we've got an eye on Daniel Tufts, and I've got to say, he's really sliding that car around a little bit there. I mean, was it just me, Ron, or did you see that thing almost four-wheel drifting? It looks like he's absolutely sending the living snot out of this thing, trying to move up from P3, which, don't get me wrong, is an incredibly respectable time. Certainly the strength of field here is intense. And James Barry, you know, if I look at the top 5 I-rating drivers, well, top 5 on the grid right now, they're all between 4 and about 5,000 I rating. So, you know, it's a very, very tough strength of field. And then Kevin Adrian's not exactly a slouch either. Wilkie really punching above his I rating there. But as we already know, he's going to be moving up to S1 next season. You see there, Daniel Tufts has just aborted that lap. I do suspect maybe a little bit too much on the curb. And I'm going to try and see if I can find you another driver who's still currently on the track. Well, there's Jeff Webker. He's there coming in the pit, so that's never a bad idea. And Michael McConnell, can he improve as qualifying is coming to an end? Another clean racer as well, Michael McConnell. Very, very clean race and great sportsmanship as well. Reminds me a little bit of Juan Chi Lin there. Fantastic sportsmanship from the driver. And that is indeed Kane Lasky on the way round, I've just seen.
Yeah, there is Lasky in the 09 car trying to improve on his qualifying lap, but he's on out lap at this point in time, so that's not going to do him any sort of favors at all. Still pretty good lap time, though. Slotted in 4th at the moment. Practically nothing between himself and Tufts on that second row, so it looks like they're going to stay line astern with the checkered flag out in this qualifying session has been for about 2 minutes and 18 seconds now, so that will just about do it from this qualifying session. It's going to be James Berry grabbing the pole for, God knows, probably the 100,000 bajillionth time thus far this season. He's been fast. I've gotten the privilege to commentate a lot of races with James Berry, and have it be known, he is a very quick racer, not just in Formula 4s, but in some Radical SR10s as well. And if you're in the mood for some Radical SR10 action, you can check out all the stuff going on Pit Road Productions every single Wednesday. But with that very bad shill out of the way, I think we'll brace ourselves for what's going to be a really incredible day of racing action at Zandvoort and get that starting grid loaded up for you right about now. James Berry, the Brit in the 100 car, going to be grabbing the pole position at 1 minute 47.048. That's a really good lap time for James. Jurg Mani going to be joining him on the front row. We have Daniel Tufts starting in 3rd, Kane Lasky in 4th, Antonio Reese going to be starting in 5th, Kevin Adrian, the Mexican, behind the wheel of the number 10 car, who's incredibly impressive, as you pointed out a few moments ago, Zippy at Rudskogen 1 week ago. He's going to be starting this race in 6th, and we have Josh Wilkie joined on that 4th row by Jason Green. Rounding out your top 10 is going to be George Gonzaga and Michael McConnell. Soren Gerits in the number 21 car, who should be pointed out at this point in time. He's been very generous to sponsor this broadcast and make it possible here today on SMB. So Soren, thank you very much, gentlemen. He is going to be starting this race in 11th. Then we have Alan DeGassis, a Masters driver, going to join him on that 6th row. Looking down past the top 12, we have Peter Maddox, the Aussie, in the 927 car. Jim Brewster, another Masters driver, going to join him on that 7th row. Andrew Love in 15th, Brad Cathcart in 16th. Bill Walker starting this race from the 17th spot. Jeff Wubker in the 309 car, going to be starting in 18th. Paul Jackson in 19th. Stevie Ray, series admin, going to round out your top 20. Then we have Jeff Jacobson, Russell Telker, and Wilson Brazarosco rounding out your grid. Gotta say, Russell Telker, Jeff Jacobson, and Wilson Brazarosco did not take any sort of qualifying time at all, and I'm not sure if Wilson Brazarosco, a Spec 1 man in the number 44 car, is actually going to be taking to the starting grid at all. Don't see him out there, don't see an odd number of race cars, but still going to have 22 starters for what is set to be a really intriguing day of racing action under the sun here on the coast of the Atlantic Ocean in the Netherlands.
I've got some, it is a beautiful track, and I do believe just in the back of that shot there was a cruise liner as well. I can't tell you which one iRacing used, but purely for the giggles, I spotted that, ladies and gentlemen. But I got to say, one thing that I do find as well, out of a lot of the tracks that we cover, Laguna Seca yesterday is probably another good example, but you can see here just very slightly, as you look in the center of the frame and look down towards the bottom right, the sheer camber change and the track elevation change. And that for me is what really, you know, is a bit of a game changer when it comes to a lot of these racetracks as the cameras there trying to look through the fence. But, you know, it's one of the things, like, I'm quite fortunate in some ways. Like, some of the places I've lived, it has had roads which, you know, that really does add to it. And certainly my local track has a good bit of elevation change. But it's generally, when you think of racetracks, Ron, I mean, the hills is not really what tends to come to mind. It more tends to be, you know, the corners rather than just, you know, the ups and the downs.
Yeah, that's the thing with a lot of racetracks in the world. The elevation change can just throw such a huge curveball your driver's way. Let's say you take a track like Spa, for instance. It's one of the most heavily elevation change laced tracks in the world, as that's Jeff Jacobson stops into the chicane. So not sure what in the world may have happened there. A possible checkup with that very tight chicane, which is just an absolute bottleneck. But getting back to the point that I was going to mention, if you take a track like Spa, for instance, get the same base layout and completely flatten it down whereby there's like not even like a millimeter of elevation change, it'll drive a lot differently than it does in real life. And the same can kind of be said about Zandvoort. It's an odd track in the world of iRacing for the simple sake they have the scan from 2008 where you didn't have the banking through turn 14 or turn number 3, and a lot of these other corners that may have been ever so slightly reprofiled were in their old form back in the original scan. But it's just been completely overhauled. It has a much different feel, this racetrack, compared to how it did when it was a bit more flat. So I think you mentioned a very good point there about how elevation change or maybe a little bit camber into the corners can just change the way certain parts of this racetrack can feel.
Absolutely. Like, I'm trying to picture Spa being flat now, and it just isn't the same. If anything, it reminds me very, very slightly of Kota there. There's a little bit of elevation change there, but Texas generally not known for being the most hilly of venues.
Yeah, I gotta say, I have certain experience when it comes to some racetracks, mainly like road and oval courses, because there's only one in the world of iRacing that has any sort of like elevation change, and that's a Charlotte Roval. All the rest of them are flat. Yeah, you do have some racetracks where it may be flat, but it's still a really wonderful ride. The Daytona Road Course, for instance, that's a pretty good one. But there's other tracks as well. If you completely removed any sort of elevation change, it would feel it would feel flat in a way. It'd be like opening a 5-week-old soda that you opened, 5 weeks ago. It would not be a very pleasurable experience at all. But before I make anyone possibly ill on this broadcast, which I'm surprised I don't do that with my own voice, we'll brace ourselves for what's going to be a really good day of racing action around this wonderful ride in the world of motorsports. Got a whole lot of racers really feisty, waiting to try and grab that green and also grab a victory in one of the last races of this season. That Porsche pace car making that turn to come down pit lane. The field now in the hands of James Barry. The green flag is out and the drivers are on their way. That's a really good start for him. Same can't be said about York Monty. He's now falling into the crutches of Daniel Tuss. We may see some side-by-side racing there. Look at Antonio Reese nearly making a 3-wide heading down into turn number 1. I don't think so, Antonio. I think he's losing out a little bit of time. He's now side-by-side with Kevin Adrian going to drop down to 6 at the stands at the moment, hang off into turn number 2 for the first time. This is a calm before the storm, I think, though, Zippy, because that chicane that we're coming up to in just a couple of moments' time, some of these drivers may not even remember that that chicane is there. Others are going to go into that corner, maybe misjudging it a little bit. It's such a tricky section. Feels like you're threading the eye of the needle with the needle attached to a Saturn V rocket traveling at escape velocity, but these drivers making it through surprisingly clean, coming back up the hill and back onto the Grand Prix layout.
Absolutely, and I got to say, fantastically clean start from these guys so far. I didn't see a single incident, and no, for myself, like, you know, I don't get heat for it, but it's certainly been discussed before. I'm very not overly aggressive, I find, but I'm quite keen at a race start, and the way I see it, as long as I don't take anybody out, it's fair game. But you can see a couple of these drivers very quickly deciding to get into single file. You know, you get the little bit the melee at the very, very start of the race, which, you know, you've got to try and capitalize on that. But generally, these guys do realize it is quicker to go in a straight line. It looks like Daniel Tuff's looking to have a little bit of a sniff up here on our friend Jorg Vanny, who's currently leading the Masters. His nearest competitor is back in P6 of Antonio Reese.
Yeah, looking at this point, looking good for Monty, but again, anything can happen between now and the checkered flag. Haven't even concluded this first lap. Monty going off into the gravel, coming out of turn number 13. That's one of the most important corners in iRacing, because if you get a bad exit there, especially in the Formula Vs who visited this track a couple of weeks ago, it's just a really tough ride heading down the start-finish straightaway through the final corner before we finally get into the braking zone of turn 1. And because of that small little trip up, despite the fact these Formula Ford race cars don't draft too tremendously well, Tufts gets that move done to slip in front of Monty. Monty at this point in time, you know, despite the fact he has an even bigger cushion now that Josh Wilkie's gone past Antonio Reese to slip Wilkie's way up into 6th, Monty still doesn't want to lose out on a whole lot of time. He's not a charity driver. He doesn't want to throw out time like it's going out of style and just give it to people who may try and capitalize on a bit more than he would. But at this point in time, Monty's still got to try and keep his nose to the grindstone and try not to lose out on any more positions. Even just staying within grasp of Daniel Tuss will be on his agenda. But I gotta say, Zippy, I think he's losing out on a little bit of time, as now only a half a second between himself and Kane Lasky for P3 and P4.
Well, there definitely isn't a lot in it, and certainly one thing I did find from that first pass is you saw, you know, you got past going down the start-finish straight, and, you know, the straight is long enough that, you know, he's able to tuck back in, so it could be interesting. I do wonder if we're going to see a little bit of leapfrogging from these guys here. Certainly it's going to be especially interesting towards the end, but the biggest concern I think I would have for this race so far, it's going to be Daniel Tuffs, and that's not him as a driver, it's that, can he stay there with James Barry? And I think Jorg behind him is going to be very, very aware. All of these guys, in fact, will be very, very aware of, you know, if you get a breakaway here, you know, that could be it. That could be the end of, you know, the podium shot. And certainly we saw in the Formula Vs yesterday, we had a 3-car breakaway of Jason Green, Alan De Gases, and 4 too low, which, sorry about that. It took me a second there. 4 doesn't grace us with his presence for the F1600s or SRFs yet. We're working on that. And you see there, look, Barry has gone over to the other side, just trying to break the draft. Tuff's doing everything he can, and you got to wonder just how worthwhile is that going to be. Antonio Reese right up on the back, and that's George Gonzaga trying to make a move. He went and got one of them. He got Soren Gerits, and it looked like he was going to have a go at Jason Green as well. He's side by side, not quite able to get it done. Antonio Reese is going to get the draft. Oh my gosh, I thought that was going to be an accident then. Door is closed. Antonio Reese not able to get it done. He sends it down the inside. Reese goes wide.
Spin!
Oh, no,
Gerits going for the dive. Yes, Soren Gerits going for the dive in the 21 car, heading down into turn number 3. You could tell that was drama-packed based off the fact I sound like a tornado siren there a couple of moments ago. And here's the replay. A move like that is always going to end in disaster for the simple sake of with the banking heading in there. The track just falls away from you, and with that track falling away, the grip's going to fall away from you as well. The amount of times I have tried to go for a move like that, I can't even count it on my fingers and toes. Gerits going for a move like that, and it's going to end in disaster, losing out a little bit of time, and now falling into the crutches of a massive pack, including Maddox, Brewster, Walker, Cathcart. I think Andrew Love is also at the tail end of that as well. So that was a big mistake a couple of moments ago from Soren Gerits, but an easy one to make as well, especially in the heat of battle.
Oh, absolutely, and I can't fault him for trying to make that move, but potentially a little bit of a learning moment there. And certainly, honestly, I was watching a video by Jimmy Broadbent the other day, and he was, I was just I needed some entertainment. I mean, don't get me wrong, Jimmy's a great content creator, but he was doing like, reviewing people saying like, should I protest this and stuff like that. And one of the things I learned, he was reviewing one at Laguna Seca, and I thought about this a lot in the race yesterday, and he was explaining about how the camber can give the car so much more grip. So as soon as he went in now, I'm like thinking, okay, is this going to work for him or against him? But we're going to put that on hold right now because it looks like Alan DeGasse is good. He's right behind Michael McConnell, and yep, he's going to make a move as they head down into turn 1.
Ooh, here we go, side by side, heading off into turn number 1. McConnell trying to hold off any sort of challenge. They're going to be side by side coming out of the corner, and McConnell's going to hold it off for now to remain in at 10th. Meanwhile, Wilkie making up another spot. I think there may have been a moment not terribly long ago. He's now battling with Reese, so those two drivers battling for the final positions inside the top 5 as we continue to follow this fight with DeGassis and McConnell briefly riding on board with him, heading down now through that chicane. Gotta think of a name for it. I see a porta potty there on the outside, but I think calling it porta potty chicane would be a bit more disingenuous. That would not be ideal. We'll have to come up with a new name for it between now and the end of this race. But at this point in time, these drivers slowly settling into some sort of groove as we're going to take a look at the replay to see a moment involving Peter Maddox, the Aussie in the 927 car. You can see him heading down this curved back straightaway before he has to get on the brakes, drop the anchors, heading into the Hans Ur chicane. Quick little spin heading into the corner, and nice. Ooh, boy, who was that put on a really good bit of an evasive maneuver there? May have been Jim Brewster. I think I saw Brewster, the first car to arrive at the scene of that incident. Trying to figure out who else it may have been. May have been Bill Walker. I saw definitely have a heart in the mouth moment as he saw that car sideways right in front of him.
Well, I got to say, that was an absolutely fantastic job at evasion. All of these drivers just, they got the memo and they absolutely ducked out of that incident. And I can't fault them for that. But we will give a little bit of recognition here for Jim Brewster as well while we're here and he's in the area. I got to say, it's the Formula Vs he does an absolutely fantastic. So tomorrow's just got me outhouse chicane. Like, I can't keep a straight face for that. But it's just recognizing Jim Brewster. He does a lot of work behind the scenes for the Formula Vs, and not only that, with the points and stuff, working that out. So again, thank you very much, Jim, and also very, very interesting individual to get speaking to. Had a very interesting upbringing with the world of cars, a lot of British cars, which, don't get me wrong, they're beautiful, but questionable at times, I'd say, unless it's a Jaguar E-Type. That I think is worth suffering for. But he's having a pretty good race so far. Don't get me wrong, he's back in P13, but he's certainly holding his own, and he's currently in 4th for the Masters right now in this race.
Yeah, that's a pretty good drive for him as it stands at the moment. Gotta say, we've seen a bit more Masters participation all throughout this season. Lots of these Masters drivers have been around the block in the Weekend Warriors world before, and just a consistent cast of characters. That's one of my main things I absolutely love about the Weekend Warriors series, whether it's the Formula Vs on Saturday or the Formula Fords and Spec Racer Fords on Sunday. It's just you get that sense of community with a lot of racers running pretty much every single season, sometimes every single race throughout a season without fail. So always nice to see a consistent cast of characters running all throughout the racing season. Look at Brad Cathcart, who's another Weekend Warriors and Ray Esports special. We've seen him run in the Ray Esports Club Racing Series on Wednesday. I gotta say, Brad Cathcart choosing to have a Ray Esports breakfast, that's a pretty odd phrase that I just uttered out of my mouth, but I mean, he's been pretty fast in that series as well. So Brad Cathcart, always nice to see the Aussie in the 905 car out there on the racetrack. Slowly losing touch, it must be said, with that pack of Brewster and Walker in front of him, and now falling into the crutches of Love. Those two may start to battle for 15th.
They may do, but we're going to put our eyes up here right now because Alan Degassis is on the charge. And he's got Soren Gerits right behind him. As he's going on the inside, is McConnell going to get hung out to dry here? It looks like Degassis has got by. Is Soren Gerits going to get it as well? McConnell doing what he can to try and stay in that draft now. It's very interesting. Oh, but Soren Gerits manages to take it on the inside. I got to say, what a move. Don't get me wrong, he had a little bit of a whoops. Oh, who was that now? That looked like Antonio Reese. Oh, dear.
Oh, there is Reese. He is slowing now down to 12th. What in the world has happened to Antonio Reese? Looking at some side-by-side action with himself and Wilkie. Well held, Josh. That was a mega sideways snap at ends in tears again, heading through turn number 3. That was, what, like 4 or 5 collisions between those racers in the span of a couple of moments. No love lost between those two. One's a Spec 2 driver, the other's a Masters racer. Both of them are blisteringly quick in the Weekend Warriors world. What in the world happened there, Josh? That was pretty strange. Not sure what to make of that incident with Reese and Wilkie.
As I look at it, honestly, so far we've seen that the inside of that corner is almost like it's hot lava kind of deal. You do not want to go in there. And it certainly, it looked like Wilkie kind of just, it's almost as if he just felt him on his back leg and kind of shook him off a little bit. But, I definitely don't think there's any negligence or anything like that in such a scenario. I think it's more there is like the floor is lava kind of scenario. But I do find it interesting. Brad Cathcart's dropped back in this pack. Andrew Love's managed to sneak up a little bit, and certainly Jim Brewster, he's leading that train, and a guy just behind him, actually, Jeff Jacobson, he's going to be getting into that pack. Peter Maddox getting into that pack, and our very own Stevie Ray, he's closing in as well. So right now, the more that these guys fight from like P13 all the way down to P19, potentially P20 here, Paul Jackson, we could have like a 7-8 car battle going on. As something's going on with Bill Walker. Yeah, he's got in the pits. He's going for the undercut.
Walker in the 319 car being one of the first drivers to come down pit lane on their own merit thus far in this race. What's happened to Wilkie? He's gone off the track. You can see him in the gravel trap coming at turn number 2, trying to get it turned around back in the right direction. Let's see what in the world happened here. I think he found himself in a battle with Kevin Adrian and George Gonzaga. Must have ended in tears following Wilkie in the 223 car. Let's see what happens here. Oh, he may have just outbroke himself heading off into turn 2. Hit the back of Adrian, and that iRacing weird janky physics that tend to pop up every now and then, just spinning him around like a top and dropping him down the running order. He now finds himself in 13th. I gotta say, despite that drama we saw with those two not terribly long ago, it is maybe cosmic justice the fact that if Wilkie is able to gain about 4 seconds in the not-too-distant future, he'll find himself back in a battle with his old sparring partner of Antonio Reese. So sometimes the racing gods tend to play a little bit of a joke against a driver.
Well, you say that. If I was Wilkie, I'd be more worried about this gentleman here, and that's Andrew Love. It's good to see him back today, but you can see he's very much lost the advantage there of being higher up in the field, but still he's leading S1. But we're not going to focus too much on him because I believe Daniel Tufts and James Barry are starting to go at it for the race lead. Yeah, let's have a look. These guys have not quite broken away. You can see York Manny and Kane Lasky coming back behind in the background, but certainly it is a lead pack of 4 before you get to Kevin Adrian, and you can see there James Barry doing everything he can to break this out, and Daniel Tufts, he's almost slingshot into the lead, not quite able to get it done. York Manny looks like he's trying to put a nose in with Kane Lasky very wisely at this point, hanging back. Gonna see if anything further involves as Daniel Tufts trying to make a move around the outside just then.
Yeah, you can see this pack at the front is very much breaking out. Some drivers come down pit lane. All Masters drivers, Antonio Reese, Brad Cathcart, and Stevie Ray, making their respective runs to come into the pits. Gotta say, Antonio Reese can't be too surprised about that, considering some damage he may have picked up with that incident with himself and Wilkie not terribly long ago. But getting back to the point I was going to mention with this front pack fight, which has started to boil over. Barry, Tufts, Monty, and Lasky covered by about a second, heading their way through turn number 7 on the 8th lap of this race. Only only 13 and a half minutes on the board of this 40-minute long race thus far. Seen a whole lot of drama break out thus far, usually in the mid-pack. The front drivers, meanwhile, they've been a bit more cautious. They've been applying some restraints when it comes to battling hard. However, I think considering that we're seeing some drivers a little bit farther in the back make that run to come down pit lane, we may end up seeing these drivers up towards the front start to dice for positions, seeing those pit stops hove into view.
Well, another thing we've got to think about as well, Ron, is there is more than one way to make a pass. Don't get me wrong, it's the most fun to do it on the track, but you can also do it in the pit lane, and certainly that is something that these guys will be thinking about. Now, James Barry has been incredible at saving fuel, don't get me wrong. Very talented driver, but there's only so much you can do with that. If Tufts, Manny, and Lasky can all save a bit of fuel behind him, they will slingshot past in the pits. And at that point, you got to wonder as well, what is the best way to play that? If you're James Barry, do you come into the pits early, try and do the undercut and just stop these guys from drafting behind you, but risk going back into traffic? Like, I'm not really sure what the best tactic is. Certainly, my racing pedigree is, well, let's be fair to say, it's not the premium dog food, ladies and gentlemen. It's more of the, you just fed your dog, that kind of deal. But these guys certainly doing very well so far. They've opened that gap up even further now, and it's Kevin Adrian. It was about 5.7 seconds back. He's now opened the gap up to 7.3 seconds. So this lead pack really pulling away from the rest of the field.
Yeah, you can see that gap has just ballooned as we may see some side-by-side fighting with George Gonzaga and Kevin Adrian in the next few moments. Just saw them have a swaparoo positions. They're going to be heading into the chicane in just a couple of moments. Time as Wilkie and Brewster have now had a swaparoo of their own. They're battling along with Jacksons and Maddox. Lots of stuff going on up and down this field, guys. I feel bad for you, Zippy. Just trying to keep focused. Crash heading up the hill. That's Wilkie and Brewster coming to blows heading into that chicane. Both of those cars are wrecked. Wilkie, Josh is furious. That is Wilkie not very happy at all with Jim Brewster. You don't like to see it all. That is going to be tough stuff for the both of them. Wilkie, he's had a very scrappy race. Brewster was putting together a really good one. I think Josh may have had a slight boiling over of tempers. Let's take a look to see what went down here. I think that was just a total misjudgment there from Josh, if I'm being completely honest. May have heard a call from his spotter saying that he was clear, but that was just a messy incident a couple of moments ago.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I feel very bad for our comrade there. Definitely, it's not been the race that he wanted today, but certainly, it's one of those things where you got to think maybe, low risk, high reward. How hard do you want to fight? I'm not entirely sure how that's going to affect his championship standings, but certainly it's going to be a good day for Andrew Love, because he's now leading in the S2 for this race, and currently he's got a good bit of gap there. Don't get me wrong, he's got Jeff Jacobson ahead of him, but they're fighting in different positions. Actually, let's give a little shout out to Jeff Jacobson right now. Don't get me wrong, he didn't set a time, but he's currently up 10 places, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, pretty good race thus far for Jeff Jacobson. He is a hard charger at this point by a pretty significant margin. The only person that I have a feeling will be able to challenge him would probably be Paul Jackson. He's running a couple of spots behind in the 13th position right now, up 6 spots from where he started in this race. There's Paul the Brit in the 249 car. Always nice to keep our tabs on him. I'll tell you what, I've got some pretty interesting stories with Paul Jackson, considering we are slowly but surely approaching the end of this season. So I'll bring back a little bit of lore from a couple of seasons ago in the Weekend Warriors world with the Weekend Warriors runoffs that were being held at Daytona a couple of seasons ago. And Paul ended up having some very odd aerial acrobatics. He ran wide coming out of turn 1, went through the grass, and front flipped about 3 times. I personally have never seen something like it before or since. So Paul Jackson may be a defier of physics, certainly a defier of his competition, up 6 spots thus far. A pretty good race for him. Same can be said about the likes of Jeff Lubker right behind. He's made up 4 spots as well. Lots of drivers being some hard chargers. The same could be said also about George Gonzaga. He's running a little bit farther up the road as we see a battle maybe brewing here involving Brad Cathcart and Stevie Ray.
Well, we do know that Stevie has already been in the pits. I believe Brad Cathcart has as well. Don't get me wrong, I really should be able to read my timing screen better, but here's a good thing about being a producer, ladies and gentlemen. You can kind of hit buttons and see. There you go. They both pit on lap 7. There you go. This is why I have the buttons here, everyone. But we were saying good things about Jeff. I've just got a warning he crashed. So let's take a quick look at that. Sorry, Jeff.
And we're going to have to break out the SMB letterhead to issue out this formal apology to Jeff Jacobson. Take a look at this replay of the incident that may have befallen him a couple of moments ago. This is heading into the hairpin at turn number 10. Overcooks it badly. Mega sideways snap, hits the grass, and just spins around like a top. An easy mistake to make, to be sure. That hairpin, I will continue to contend, is the biggest pain in my butt in the world. I've ridden on roller coasters that were less of a pain in the butt than that corner. So turn 10, real tough spot around this racetrack, as we also see Jeff Wubker come down pit lane. So that slow trickle of drivers into the pits seeming to continue.
Well, as we have a look back at the lead pack, you see Daniel Tufts has managed to take the lead away from James Barry. But don't get me wrong, I do wonder if there is a little bit of strategy involved. As I was saying earlier, you know, you've got to think about the fuel. They do have to make a pit for this maneuver. And certainly, if you're leading the race, you are literally just punching a hole in the air for everybody. And, you know, passing in the pits is certainly a valid tactic. Certainly, it's one that Antonio Reese is pretty familiar with, for sure. But we're going to see how that works out as I look a little bit further back as well. Kevin Adrian getting into the mix of things again. He's got Jason Green behind him, George Gonzaga ahead, about 6/10 of a second between all three of them. So, you know, it's certainly interesting to see how this is going to develop so far. But currently, Jörg Manny leading the Masters right now. And these guys, I do believe they're getting a little bit of a cucaracha going as they head down the start-finish straight.
Oh, and look at Tufts hitting the grass. That's going to take him out of that fight right as you switch it back to me. And he noses it into the barriers for good measure as well. Tufts, I can imagine, is kicking himself after that mistake a couple of moments ago. Is he going to tow back into the pits? Is he just going to stay there and
He's stuck
sulk?
in the wall.
Oh, is he stuck there in the barrier? I'm trying to listen in. Is he revving up that motor? I think he may be. I'm trying to listen in. My iRacing volume is incredibly...
Let's check the replay run. I think he's had a hardware issue.
Oh, there you can see he's finally reversing out, so not sure what in the world is going on there. That car is certainly going to be taken out of that fight as he spent a whole lot of time against that barrier. Let's take a look to see what happened here, Zippy, right as we were cutting back. Right as you cut back to me, I saw Tufts go into the grass. There's only one way that can end, and it is terribly, terribly wrong. Not sure what was causing that. Maybe a little bit of air trickery from the fact that James Barry had pulled alongside. Even then, I mean, these cars aren't incredibly aero-sensitive, so that's not going to push the car off the road. So, not sure what in the world is going on there. Maybe Tufts. I mean, next time we get a good camera swap here. The nose cone completely missing off that car. So, going with the air conditioning option at this point in time. But either way, you can see that car driving like an absolute hoopty-rod. Not sure why he drove off into the grass and had that moment there a couple of moments ago. That was strange.
I'm not quite sure. That's certainly, I wouldn't mind finding out if anybody knows a little bit more about what happened to Daniel Tufts there. By all means, do let us know. Certainly, anybody in the race session who perhaps didn't have that go to plan. There's somebody in the chat who I know would fit that category, but certainly Daniel Tufts right now is still up and out on the move, but for how long? Certainly a little bit of hero as zero on that situation, not what he was looking for. And I don't think these guys get a fast repair in this one, but forgive me, I'm not the sharpest at remembering when fast repairs do occur, but certainly you see the lead pack still going for it. James Barry, Jörg Manny, Kane Lasky in the league of their own, but we're going to head back to, I say that, looked like Lasky was going to have a sniff there, but we're going to head back to Kevin Adrian. He certainly provided a lot of entertainment last week at Rudskogen, and certainly onto the backside of Jörg Gonzaga. Certainly, you know, James Barry's teammate as well, so certainly these two drivers, you know, despite being a little spread out on the grid, they say, well, say that the first and fourth respectively, not really able to make benefits of the team tactics here today. And Russ Telka saying, one fast repair. Thank you very much, Russell.
And thank you as well, Russell, for noting that turn 10 isn't actually a hairpin around this racetrack. Always considered it one because it's basically a 180-degree corner, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. You can tell I was never good in geometry as a high schooler, but trying to think of what could be another good name for that corner as well. I think we'll call it, start referring to it as a cold toilet seat bend for the simple sake that it is incredibly comfortable to be around. And plus, occasionally, can be a pain in the ass. But nevertheless, looking at the action still, Adrian finding himself in the midst of a small little hornet's nest, a pack forming between himself, Gonzaga, and Green, as we see Daniel Tufts coming down pit lane, missing what in the world? Okay, so he gets a fast repair, so that wheel pops back on, no big deal, but Tufts missing another wheel. That was him stopped on the outskirts of turn number 1. Not sure, how did he lose? I'm trying to I'm
curious.
I have a slight amount of dyslexia. That
here we go.
right front wheel, so
Right.
you can see him understeering off the Formula Ford, the number 34 Formula Ford car of Daniel Tufts, driving more like a truck at this point in time. But you can see driving very, very oddly. I'm curious. Zippy, I think you may have brought up a very good point. This could have been like hardware issue related. Maybe he lost force feedback or something like that, or maybe he had like his force feedback turned up a lot, because just the way he's kind of turning into the corners, I'm not sure if he got any sort of suspension damage that would make that car drive so bizarrely. But I'm trying to think of what may have actually caused this second incident. Is him running off into the grass, heading into turn number 10. Cold toilet seat bend, nearly catching out another driver there in the case of Tufts. Looking
Something's
through his,
funky.
yeah, this is very, very odd. I'm curious. It actually... trying to see now. Next time when he goes through the Hans Earth chicane, I think we'll get a good view of it. I'm curious if that wall contact actually broke off that right front wheel and then it just kind of wiggled itself loose, and then he found him. Yeah, you could see that car.
Here we go.
That wheel's incredibly wobbly, so I think that's part of the reason why he's struggling so badly with a lot of these corners, and maybe just tried to get it up to speed to get out of harm's way, and that wheel just popped off like a misshapen Lego. So still gotta stay with this replay. The longest replay in the world here for Daniel Tufts, trying to figure out what exactly may have gone wrong here. I have a feeling that my theory about him going fast, heading through the banking, may have snapped it off.
Ooh, there
you
it
can
is.
see, yep, there we go. Hallelujah.
That's fascinating. I'm sorry, I was probably a little bit too into that compared to everybody else, and not no roasting Daniel Tufts there, but let's get back to some more of the action here, ladies and gentlemen. Stevie Ray, and it looks like he's got Andrew Love behind him, so Love must have just come out of the pits there. Stevie Ray very aware of that fact and giving him plenty of room. He knows that his fight is not with Andrew Love, so Love will be looking to try and make his way back up through the field. As I say that, how about Jorg Gonzaga? Now, he is got Kevin Adrian right behind him. These guys have been going at it for some time now, and certainly, you know, Kevin Adrian's not been able to find his way around just yet, as Jason Green has just gone in the pits as well.
Jason Green making that run to come down pit lane. All these drivers have to do it at some point in time, but I haven't seen too many make that call outside of some runners here now a little bit farther in the back. But these two, I believe, have stayed out at this point in time. I'll take a look at my live timing tower to correct myself there. Yes, they have not come into the pits. Green has. Paul Jackson now has. He's coming into the pits from the 11th position, now leading currently in the Spec 2 category with Wilkie out of the picture. That's going to be a really compelling fight in that class. So who knows who's going to end up winning it in there. Meanwhile, at the front of the field, still have yet to see Barry, Monty, or Lasky even think about making that call to run down pit lane. Gotta say, from what we usually see from a driver like Jorg Monty, he's not a fan of fuel saving. We have rarely, if ever, seen him fuel save in the entire history of the Weekend Warriors sphere. So at this point in time, I'm curious what sort of strategy Monty is going to apply. Maybe going to be one of the last to come down pit lane. Maybe going to pit about like 35 minutes on the clock or something like that. Who knows? We'll just have to wait and see. I gotta say, talking about a little bit of odd circularity in the world of motorsports, the racing gods can occasionally try and tweak your nipples, for lack of a better term. Daniel Tufts finds himself within striking distance of the front three, albeit one lap down. So a cruel twist of fate delivered by the iRacing gods
here we
to
go.
Tufts, as we may see Monty go for a move, heading off into turn number 1. Not close enough on Barry, but these drivers starting to feel a bit more racy at the front.
Yeah, certainly if I was Jorg Manny or Kane Lasky, honestly, I would not even be trying to take the lead right now. I would be trying to save as much fuel as I possibly can and just try and sit behind James Barry. You know he's the man to beat. You know he's got incredible pace here, and the only way I think to beat him is to do it through the pit lane at this point. As I see, you know, Kevin Adrian's gone in the pits, George Gonzaga's gone in the pits. We got a whole stack of them. Michael McConnell, Soren Gerits, Alan DeGassis, a whole stream of cars in the pits right now. And you can see there, that's Soren on his way out first. That's this week's sponsor, ladies and gentlemen. Kevin Adrian, they're going to be side by side almost as they head out of the pit lane. So certainly, I was expecting it to be a little bit dirtier. Sorry, that's George Gonzaga there. So it does look like George has managed to leapfrog Kevin Adrian through the pit lane, which is surprising because Adrian was getting a draft from Gonzaga for the majority of that race. And now Soren Gerits, very, very hot and very, very keen to get moving through the track.
I think the pressure applying to a lot of these racers are starting to feel a bit more risky, going for some moves that they may not have done in the first 28 minutes, but now we're in the final 12. So really all sort of racing conventions, you want to make it to the checkered flag first. At this point in time, these drivers are thinking, hey, there's been a pretty high attrition rate thus far as it stands. Currently only 17 cars on the lead lap, a few out of this race entirely. Some of them who really should be out of this race, Wilkie and Brewster, have rejoined only 1 lap down, which is quite surprising considering the quite substantial damage to both of those race cars. Of course, they do have a faster pair as I punch my pop filter there. Hopefully that didn't come across a mic, as now the front 3 making that call to come down pit lane. Barry, Monty, and Lasky all coming in together. Very rarely do we see a front pack all come into pit lane uniformly. But these drivers starting to buck that trend, gonna stop in their pit stall. Who's going to come out with the lead? Who's going to be in second? And who is going to be the tailing car of this fight? Who's also going to get involved in this? We may have to talk about lap traffic possibly playing a factor as to how these drivers are going to tackle that out lap awaiting now. There's Lasky. He gets a jump on both of his competitors, and it's going to be Barry and Monty Slot in second and third. But Kane Lasky, the American behind the wheel of the 09 car, having a fantastic jump down pit lane, maybe feeding his mechanics a lot of Red Bull, but either way, gonna work out well for him as he now grabs a provincial lead.
Well, we're going to see just how long he can keep hold of this. He's got about 10 minutes left to go in this race, and James Barry, certainly, he knows how to wheel a car. We're not going to contend that for even a minute, but certainly, Jörg Manny, he's almost dropped back out the stream there. He's about 1.2 seconds behind Barry, so he really, really needs to get a shift on if he's going to stay with this lead too.
Yeah, at this point in time, Jörg Manny, and I apologize for this pun in advance, he really needs to get his shift together as we see Gerits running wide coming out of turn number 3. That's going to be a mistake that we may see Adrian capitalize on. They're going to be side by side heading down this tight, twisty, flat-out blast, but Gerits incredibly deep on the brakes, heading into the chicane. Well done from Soren Gerits. That was a gutsy move if ever I saw one.
But you know what? That was replay territory. That was a absolutely phenomenal send. I've got to be honest. Like, you're going to see here, Kevin Adrian gets a little bit of a leap done, and I want to see it from Soren Gerets' view. And here you go, very late on the brakes, just shuts the door. Kevin Adrian backs out of it. Good call, but like, really, really brave maneuver there. Let's go with that.
Holy crap, Oli, you can see just a small little puff coming from one of those tires, so that was a fantastic move from Soren Gerets. Of all the races, of all the races for him to sponsor, try saying that 5 times fast, it's very fitting that he picks the one where he goes for a gutsy move like that. That may end up being highlights material come time for the end of December. But at this point in time, Monty, he's now come down pit lane again, so why is Jörg Manny come into the pits for the second time? Did he underfuel? What has gone down with Jörg Manny? Is there maybe a little bit of damage on his race car? May have scraped the barrier coming through, or was it a penalty? Was it a drive-through penalty for Jörg Manny? Gotta take a look at his time spent down pit lane just now, and I'm looking through. Did he have a drive-through penalty there? What has gone on with Jörg Manny to come down pit lane for 2 laps in a row and now falling completely out of that fight? Now he's going to have to battle hard to remain in any sort of podium spot as he's now in 4th, about 2 seconds back at Green, who's now occupied P3.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what happened to Jörg, but you know, certainly interesting move. And the good thing is for him, he'll still be leading the Masters class in this race. So certainly an interesting tactic. But you know what? I'm trying to decide where we want to take the best look at right now. So these guys are still going at it, and I believe they're going to be going at it for some time. Kevin Adrian and Soren Gerets, they're going at it. But let's have a look here at Andrew Love. He's got Stevie Ray behind him. I thought Stevie kind of gave him a bit of a courtesy earlier, but you know, I guess not. Stevie's been trying to stay with him, and Jeff Jacobson, he's just come out of the pits now. Before that, he had absolutely climbed through the order, but currently for the hard charger, it's tied between himself, Bill Walker, and incredibly Stevie Ray as well. Quite a few people 6 positions gained, and quite a few people with 5 positions gained, including this gentleman here, Jason Green, who's currently sat in P3.
There's been a pretty typical drive for Jason Green, just staying with his own race, not getting caught up in anyone else's drama, and finding himself in a fantastic spot right now. Barry and Lasky, they've had a swap-a-roo of positions as we saw that drama with Monty, so it's now Barry back in the lead. For now, we may see another swap-a-roo between these drivers. I mean, after all, still got about 7 minutes, a tick under that to be a bit more precise, left on the clock in this race. So at this point in time, it's either of these two that have a really good shot to win it. I gotta say, though, in terms of keeping to yourself and just keeping your nose to the grindstone, would not be too shocked if these two may end up coming to blows and Jason Green just slips by and grabs the victory. That would be a very fitting result for a driver who I mentioned last week. He's a very conservative driver. He likes to keep to himself a lot in these races. You could probably describe his tactics in these races as being like the ones of an ace poker player. He keeps the cards to his chest. He doesn't want to show what hand he's got until the point where no one can really counter it. We see that week after week, race after race, not just in the Formula Vs, not just in the Formula Fords, but in the Spec Racer Fords as well. So Green, he's just a driver that you see, he's not really the one that's at the forefront flashing around and just being incredibly flamboyant in the center of attention, but he's the one always lurking in the back of shots, and you could call him a secret assassin in these races more than anything else, because he is so good at just lurking in the background, and then bang, right as you don't expect it, goes in for the move and ends up in a position like this. I mean, we probably talked about him like about 5 or 6 times thus far in this race. He's made up 5 spots, so that's just textbook Jason Green driving right now.
Well, you say that. I've been keeping an eye on the gap between Jörg Manny and Jason Green, and the gap was 2 seconds, and Jörg Manny's absolutely on a flyer right now. And Russell Telka, thank you very much. He tells me that Jörg got a penalty for unsafe pit exit, so that's why he took a little bit of lap, not down victory lane, but down pit lane on this occasion. But he's already reeled Jason Green in about a second in a lap or so. So in the next 5 minutes, he's got to try and pull himself forward onto that final podium spot. He may have indeed got away with that. You can see Josh Wilkie there in the background, but he's a lap down right now. He's in 20th spot. The next nearest person for him to fight is 3 seconds up the road. So certainly that's Wilkie kind of, that's hit for his race. But I'm going to be interested to see exactly what Manny can do. You can see James Barry and Kane Lasky. These guys are still going at it. I do wonder a little bit as well. I kind of want to keep an eye on this battle slightly, because don't get me wrong, I know you can weave a little bit to break the draft, but I'm just not sure on how far you can get away with that. And it's certainly one of those things where I get it, but I don't necessarily agree with it on that kind of term. So I'm going to be interested to see next time these guys go down to start finish exactly, how that plays out.
And there's still a lot to be determined in this race, despite the fact that we have so much of this race behind us, coming up to just 4 minutes left to go. We've seen races in the Weekend Warriors series in the past that just have 15 separate curveballs thrown our way in the commentary booth and thrown the drivers' ways as well, to the point where our jaws are not even on the floor. They have dropped down. It's like the elephant's foot in Chernobyl. It just seeps through like multiple hundreds of feet of ground and then ends up in some forgotten lonely basement. But at this point in time, anything could happen between now and the checkered flag. Who knows? A meteor may come down and strike James Barry. Kane Lasky may go for a move. They're going to be side by side heading down the start finish straightaway. Lasky on the outside, Barry on the inside. Lasky backing out of it though, unless Barry just kicked on the Hyperjet, turned on the NOS, kicked on the Cuisinarts, whatever you want to say. Either way, Barry holding off the challenge from Lasky there a couple of moments ago. I think what Lasky was doing there though is he wants to be the one creating a side-by-side finish. We may have just seen a side-by-side fight with Monty and Green. Monty slipping his way back up into the final podium spot. Jim Brewster, a lap down, also involved in that battle as well. Brewster only a couple of seconds up the road from Josh Wilkie, so we may have to keep an eye on those two dingleberries. We say that with all the love and kindness in the world. They're both fantastic guys, but after what happened earlier on, it's wouldn't be too shocked if we end up seeing some very odd moments between those two, like the very odd phrases that come out of my mouth whenever I'm on the air. But nevertheless, getting back to the racing, this is a fight involving Jacobson, Love, and Stevie Ray. We may see this flare up. We got a driver in a Spec 1 car, driver in a Spec 2 car, and a driver in a Masters car as well. That's really what the Weekend Warrior Series is all about, despite the fact we've got 3 separate classes. Always have that interclass mingling going on, as we just see on our screen right now.
Well, I've got to say, it's an interesting dynamic, but I like the fact that everybody shares the track at the same time. And certainly, in some leagues, you would see that kind of stuff, and there's almost a little bit of, I don't know what the word is, and, it's kind of like, say I'm in the pro class or whatever it is, it's kind of like, I'm pro, you're am, get out of the way. And you don't see that here. And it's honestly, I really appreciate that, because, it's certainly, these guys, they have the classes, but it makes no impact on the grid standings at all. I mean, Jörg Manny is probably my favorite person to demonstrate that. He's in the Masters class, but realistically, you know, if you compare him in S1 as well, he's very competitive. Like, if you look at like Wilkie, for example, Bill Walker, both of these guys doing very, very well in S2, and you know, it's certainly nothing to shake a stick at. It's actually, speaking of Wilkie, it looks like he's caught up to Jim Brewster. The gap under 0.2 per second now. Let's just try and keep it clean, gentlemen, and hopefully go for a nice clean pass.
And here we go, the white flag in the air for these racers. Only one more lap of racing action. They get through surprisingly clean. I say surprisingly clean. They're great racers. They're great guys as well. Just after what happened earlier on, I'm sure tensions are maybe overflowing, for lack of a better term. They have to get these drivers some adult beverages just so they could talk it out when everything is said and done from this race. But I'm trying to see where exactly our leaders are of Barry and Lasky. They're heading their way into turn number 8 for the final time in this Formula Ford Weekend Warriors race. It's Barry leading over Lasky for now. However, I have a feeling, much like coming out of Eau Rouge and Radion in the lead at Spa, for instance, you're going to be a sitting duck heading down that start-finish straightaway, because from the apex of turn 13 all the way through until the braking zone of turn 1, you're flat out. And even though these race cars don't drift tremendously well, if Lasky just applies enough pressure to James Barry, which, mind you, is a really hard ask considering that Barry is very hard to crack. We call him the Iceman for a very good reason. It's tough to melt him, but if you apply a little bit of pressure on him and he has a trip up coming at turn 13, that may be good for Lasky. Lasky using all of the curb at his disposal. Coming out of the corner, is he going to have the is he going to have the run? Is he going to have the momentum? Will Lasky be able to get a move done on Barry? Barry weaving around trying to break that drift, but it's not going to be enough. James Barry going to take the checkered flag to win here at Zandvoort. Kane Lasky certainly applied a whole lot of pressure towards the end, but Barry, you got to say, he was pushing that car to the absolute limit of control. He just set his personal best lap of the race last time by, so that really speaks volumes about the kind of pressure that Barry was feeling, the fact he had to execute perfectly in that race. As we just saw a photo finish with Brewster and Wilkie. Looks like they're going to finish in P19 and P20 respectively. But man, that was just about, I gotta say, Zippy, I'm kind of shocked the fact that Lasky was able to close up that gap that much, considering that Barry had as solid of an exit as he did coming out of turn 13. And believe me, he was certainly pursuing that draft like crazy.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I think Lasky had his work cut out for him. It doesn't matter how you look at it. You know, James Barry has got a very good, well, he's talented in a race car. We're not going to deny that. And, you know, again, I'm not too sure about how I feel about, you know, the weaving on the straight. Like, I get it, but, you know, it's more, we'd have to consult the rule book. But certainly, you know, that's kind of, we don't tend to get into that too much at the Weekend Warriors. It's more sort of, you know, if somebody has a, oops, Stevie. A little bit of a contact there with Jeff. Actually, speaking of which, there we go. Here's the man I'm looking for, Mr. Jason Green. We all know what's going to happen next, so I'm going to get this this stuff out of the way here. Let's see what we got for cameras.
Yeah, I may have to switch to the slow motion broadcasting helicopter, as I joked about in the Formula V race after the slight tumble that you had there, Zippy. Only on slow motion broadcasting is our helicopter insured to withstand impacts from race cars, but here we go. Green is going to be heading through turn number 3. I'm not sure exactly what Jason Green has up his sleeve, but either way, it's probably going to drive me to absolute hysterics. It's a good thing I've only drank in half of my broadcaster-issued water bottle here, because otherwise I feel like I may end up having a trouser accident from laughing so hard. But here we go. Green, I think he's going to take to the runoff area, into the gravel, noses it into the barrier. Let's see who has the most wild ride here. Looking at that, who's that tumbling? Who just got T-boned? Oh my good lord, this is... oh boy. Who just ballparked it there? Someone just ballparked it, I think, unless I got caught by the fence, which in iRacing is usually made out of the matter of white dwarf stars. There's Jacobson upside down. That's Kevin Adrian now on his lid as well. Looking at Andrew Love, he's running against the barrier as well. I'm waiting for the jump scare, because it's going to happen at some point. Some driver is going to come in barreling like a bat out of hell and just throw me for an absolute loop. Let's take a look at this with Green. Not a whole lot of jumps around Zandvoort despite the elevation change. So let's check the form of these racers heading the barrier and going through the gravel.
Oh, that's Andrew Love that just smoked him.
Oh, Andrew Love got the 2-for-1 deal. Was quick with that. Yeah, Jackson was the one that I think may have ballparked it there a couple of moments ago. That's Monty backing into, not sure who that was, may have been Brad Cathcart, I think. I think Andrew Love, though, got the 2-for-1 deal because I think it was Jackson and, I can't even remember the drivers that he hit.
I'm on board with Paul Jackson here.
Yeah, this is going to be a wild ride. Let's see it from Jackson's POV. Oh boy, let's see this. You can see Green tumbling, and then here comes Jackson, bang into the barrier. Did he ballpark it there? He ballparked it, ladies and gentlemen. Congratulations to congratulations to Paul Jackson. He ballparked it. I think we'll start calling him Ball Jackson now with that move.
I don't know. Maybe not, Ron. Maybe not. Let's try and keep it clean today. Let's try. Let's go over
I realized that was bad right after I said it. I
realized there's some sand there, Ron, but don't get me wrong. We're going to try and stay out the beach, and I'm going to try and save you from needing a shovel as we go over the results. James Barry took your race win. Actually, I'm going to hit a magic button here. Hang on. There we go. We got music. I got a new toy. You can tell it's Wilkie's got me a new... Well, Wilkie told me to get a new toy. So it's a little bit of a learning curve for me, and I hope it's been good. Nobody said anything in the chat, so that's fantastic news. But anyway, let's carry on with these race results. So James Barry takes the lead, and not surprisingly so, but I've got to say, Kane Lasky, you put up an absolutely fantastic battle trying to contend for that race win. Jörg Manny wins the Masters division despite having that unsafe pit exit. Thank you again, Russell Telker, for filling me in on that. He took third with Jason Green in fourth and George Gonzaga in fifth. Great team result there for the insert name e-racing team. Soren Gerits takes sixth with Kevin Adrian in seventh, Antonio Reese in eighth, and Michael McConnell in ninth with Alan DeGassis in 10th.
And running out the rest of the field, we have Bill Walker finishing this race in 11th at the 319 car. Brad Cathcart going to finish right behind it in 12th. And we have Andrew Love in 13th. Stevie Ray finishing this race in the 14th spot. Jeff Jacobson, who we saw upside down there, he's gone now 2 for 2 with the other Weekend Warriors races thus far this weekend. Got involved in an incident and marked up the second flip of that Formula V Weekend Warriors race yesterday, and he ends it here at Zandvoort with the Formula Fords upside down, albeit part of some chicanery after the checkered flag. Paul Jackson finishes this race in 16th. Jeff Wubker going to finish right behind in 17th. Daniel Tufts, who I can imagine is still going to be kicking himself after that mistake, he's going to finish down in P18. Then we have Jim Brewster in 19th. Josh Wilkie rounding out your top 20. Peter Maddox, Russell Telker, and Wilson Brazarosco rounding out your grid. Maddox and Telker getting involved in some drama early on in the race, and Brazarosco not taking to the grid in the number 44 car. So that does it for the results. Now, Zippy, we got some drivers waiting in the interview waiting area looking to have a chat with us, and as we usually do, I will allow you to get everything set up and bring in James Barry in a couple of moments time to have a quick little chat with him. I still need to issue out a formal apology to him for possibly jinxing him in the Radical World Finals, which was on another broadcaster that we will not mention by name, and drag Barry into the commentary booth. And now, James Barry, welcome here to the commentary booth at Slow Motion Broadcasting. Looked like a pretty good fight with yourself and Kane Lasky coming to the checkered flag. Less than 0.2 of a second between you two after over 40 minutes of racing action. So talk us through the race that we just saw here at Zandvoort.
Yeah, just super fun though. I'm really happy to get the win after what happened to me last season here, and just really happy to, yeah, if you remember, and happy to just have super pace. Really enjoy driving the track, and I was just trying to defend the lead, not because I needed to, but because just for fun, try and stay in front for as many laps as I could through the race. Really good with Daniel at the start, and then with Kane at the end. Yeah, just really fun.
It looked like a super fun day of racing action, just finding yourself in the midst of an absolute hornet's nest all throughout that race. Things certainly got a little bit easier considering the incident with Daniel Tufts that happened right in front of you heading down into turn number 1 about midway through that race, and also what we believe was an unsafe pit exit penalty for Jörg Manny, turning that into a fight with yourself and Kane Lasky. I want to ask you about that fight with yourself and Lasky, because I noted as you took the checkered flag, the fact that you had set your personal best lap of the race on that final lap. So how was it feeling the burn and feeling the pressure on that final lap and kind of bringing you to the point where you had to put in a lap time like that just to hold on to the lead?
To be honest, at that point, I'd been doing that for the whole race, trying to stay in front and trying to just have that extra couple of tenths of pace that gives you the gap that you need to defend the lead into turn 1. So it was just about just doing the same motions over and over again, and it wasn't too much pressure. and Kane wasn't attacking me too hard, so I felt confident enough that I was going to stay in front.
And when everything was said and done, you certainly stayed in front of him, taking your 14th bajillionth victory in the past 2 seasons here from the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors. And with that, I wouldn't say it's set in stone, but looking pretty good with that Spec 1 championship to try and go back-to-back. So heading into the final race of the season in just 1 week's time at Tsukuba, running on the Moto layout, so another odd track to bring this season to a close. Maybe not feeling a whole lot of pressure in terms of that championship fight, but looking to bring this season to a very fitting close. So what are your thoughts heading into that race in just 1 week's time?
I think, to be honest, I think it is done. I'm just looking at the standings from before the race, and I think the only person who could have threatened me was Ian Joyner, but he didn't even turn up today. And then Michael, I think, will have 10 races counted now, and I don't know. I think it's done. So I'd like to think I'm the champion now. Either way, I'll come next week and do it all again and hopefully have a lot of fun. I think it was the first win that I got in a while, to be honest, despite what you say there. There's been a lot of super fast drivers who have turned up to various different races this season but not really done the whole season. So there's been a lot of challenge in every race, and just, yeah, really happy to finally get the win today. And yeah, I think get the title.
And that'd be pretty cool as well, going 2 for 2. I remember your first race with this series back at the start of Season 3 for 2024. I remember doing that broadcast with a broadcaster that will not be mentioned by name. But ever since then, you've hit the ground running in this series. So I'm going to ask you a slightly loaded question. You know, usually from my experience in the past, commentating races that you've been a part of, you've been running in the SR10, then moved here into the Formula Fords with the Weekend Warriors. Haven't seen you tackle the Spec Racer Fords yet, so any interest to maybe jump over to the SRFs?
I can't guarantee anything. I've got a lot of different cars that I want to try out in iRacing, and the SRFs a really cool community that I can see that from when I check out the broadcasts, but there's just too many different cars to promise anything, so I can't promise anything. Sorry.
It's quite alright, man. Don't worry. It would still be pretty cool to see you out on the racetrack in the Spec Racer Fords, because that field is pretty stacked as well. Same goes for this series. And it looks like, just based off your math, I will not count on my math, because my math skills are absolutely horrendous. So I'll leave it to you, and we'll wait and see come time for the other start of next broadcast in just 1 week's time from this series. But James, congratulations on the win. I will not say congratulations on the championship just yet, but I will say congratulations on the victory, and we'll let you go and celebrate right after you give your thanks and shout-outs before we let you go.
Yeah, to shout out everyone who sets up the league. It's just been really a pleasure to be part of these 2 seasons, so yeah, just cheers everyone involved.
Alrighty, there you go. James, thank you so much for joining us in the commentary booth. Well done on the victory here at Zandvoort. I'm excited to see you back out on the racetrack for one final time in just 1 week's time. Thanks for joining us, man.
Alright, I'll be there. See you. Bye-bye.
And that right there was James Berry taking the victory in this race. And now, Zippy, you want to have a chat with Jorg Mani?
I always want to have a chat with Jorg Mani. He's a man after my own heart. He just does it a lot better. Jorg, what an absolutely fantastic day for you today. And certainly, you know, we did get a little bit worried there when we saw you heading down the pit lane again. But tell us a little bit about your race strategy, certainly when you was in that lead pack. And tell us a little bit about what happened, that you had a little bit of a courtesy drive through the pits.
I start from the back. I just touched the white line on the pit exit. That was it. So unsafe pit exit. But so I think Barry did the same thing, and he got away with it. I was just asking him before, and I didn't understand why I didn't get. But possibly I crossed the white line, and he didn't. He just touched it. And yeah, that was it. But then I saw actually Jason passing through the pit lane me. And I thought, oops, okay, I'm trying to catch him, and that's what I did at the end. But the beginning, in case of race strategy, I thought, okay, Barry is kind of out of my league. But then I saw I can follow him quite good, actually, without forcing the car to do things that I don't want to do, that he does it. And so I felt comfortable driving behind him. And yeah, I thought, okay, let's see. Then Kane behind me, and you know me, I don't like him behind me, so I let him pass. I hope that he does things
Fly Alex
very...
the burn.
I'm just be honest, and I still don't trust him. And
That's okay. Be you, Jorg. Be you.
Yeah, but then the race was quite intense, as I mentioned at the beginning, and that was expected because it is really difficult to pass on Zandvoort. The only passing point is actually turn 1. But if you're there a bit too late, it might cause a bit chaotic and or chaos, and I tried not to do that, and yeah, but I'm happy with 3rd place. So it was really intense, and I'm sweating like hell at the moment.
Well, that's okay, Jorg. We got to watch you on the stream. We don't have to be around you in person. And saying that, despite the fact that
Lucky-wise.
yeah, honestly, I look like 3-day-old roadkill right now. You know, if there's a reason we don't have cameras here on SMB and the hair and beauty department, you know, we're going to have to expand to plastic surgery to make me something that would be pleasant to look at. But Jorg, I got to say, what an absolutely fantastic drive. And not just today, yesterday as well. Obviously, I got to go wheel to wheel. Well, I say wheel to wheel. I never even managed to get alongside. No, I did wheel with you.
You did
Yesterday.
You did.
I had a lot of fun, and I wanted to thank you again for that. We did actually mention earlier as well. How many years was it you were saying since you've been and seen a doctor?
Phew. I don't know anymore.
Yeah,
I don't know anymore.
I brought it up earlier how you telling me how you managed to do all these years without seeing a doctor. I was just so impressed because obviously the Masters, in the most affectionate way, get a little bit of a hard time for being a little bit older. And the way I see it is, you're schooling me, and there's a lot I can learn. So you're going to have a lot of fun watching this broadcast back later, I'm sure. But Jorg, before we let you go, is there anybody you'd like to thank for today's success?
Yeah, of course, Stevie for setting up all those races. He does that still with a lot of passion, and I really admire it for him. And of course, all of his companions now that help him out when he has not enough time to do it. And I love these races, actually. There was a time I didn't like it anymore, but I still love it now. And that's the most exciting thing. And I still hope I can be a member of that Weekend Warriors for many, many years to come. And for you, of course, for always doing that great broadcast. And I really like you guys. And I hope next year I can visit at least 1 or 2 colleagues in England once. America is a bit far away from me at the moment, but England is close by. So I might step over there next year one day.
Oh, I got to ask Jorg, who's on your list of people you'd like to meet? I'm curious. I mean, this is something I've done before, and I got to say, like iRacing as a whole, I've met some of my favorite people on the planet through iRacing. Sadly, not a lady friend at this point, but the odds is pretty much stacked against me there. And it's okay to laugh at that, ladies and gentlemen. It's self-deprecating humor. But Jorg, tell us exactly who you, if you don't mind sharing, I get that could be a personal thing. Who is it that's on your hot list to meet right now?
At the moment, it's definitely Antonio. I'm definitely going to visit him once in Portugal.
Oh.
And you, of course, I hope one day in England, if you're in England, and JP, JP as well. He is. We mentioned that many times already that I'm going to go over there once. And there's another guy who does not race anymore at the moment. He lives close to Alton Park, and he told me that he wants to bring me to Alton Park one day because we in Switzerland don't have any racetracks. So
oh gosh,
I'd like to see at least once a racetrack in my life. Okay. Stop, I just lied. I was in Zandvoort many years ago when it was totally different to track. So with my father at that time, with my stepfather. So that was when I was 10 or so.
That was definitely a while ago.
It's almost 50 years ago, yeah.
50 years ago? Damn.
Yeah, almost 50 years ago, yeah.
Damn.
And, but these are the, and I would like to visit David Gaspers once as well, because he's
That's
just
fair.
next door to me, actually, in Germany.
That's fair.
And there are a few other guys I like to see once, and especially Michael Nelson. He's in Denmark. And these are about the guys I like to meet next year once in my life.
Well, I gotta say, Jorg, I completely relate, and I feel so sad telling you this, but I actually live in Canada now. I'm from the UK, but I live in Canada. So don't get me wrong, though. If you make it out here, I will buy you a lobster steak dinner, surf and turf. If you make it here, I will buy you dinner very happily. But Jorg,
you got me. You got me.
there you go. It's not me that's the appetizer. Well, not literally, I guess. With a surname like Salmon, it's possible. But it's the food. And don't get me wrong, I would choose the food every day. But Jorg, we're going to have to let you go. It's absolutely fantastic to see you back here in the booth. And I really enjoyed getting to talk to to you again. But ladies and gentlemen, I guess, Ron, we should probably start to wrap this show up.
Thanks a lot, Zippy,
Yeah, I think,
and you guys as well.
Thank you very much, Jorg. Thank you.
Yeah, kind of hung Jorg out to dry there for a second. Sorry about that, Jorg. But yeah, it's been a pretty exciting day of racing action. I mean, as you usually expect with the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors, put on some great shows week after week, race after race, season after season as well. And I'll tell you what, the action isn't even over today, as coming up in less than an hour's time, we're going to have the action with the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors running their second to last race of the season at Suzuka. That's going to be a really good day of racing action here for Super Sunday, only on Slow Motion Broadcasting. And the action, I mean, it just continues all around, because every single weekend we got the action with the Formula V Weekend Warriors, this Formula Ford Weekend Warriors, as you just saw in the Spec Racer Ford Weekend Warriors, all going to be bringing their seasons to a close this upcoming Sunday, as we've got the season finales from all of them. That's going to be a really good day of racing action. Also got the Ray Esports Club Racing League running 70 minutes of GT4 action at Circuit of the Americas coming up in just a couple of days' time. So if you want to stay up to date of all of the racing action, remember to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss out on any of the racing action. But I think for this first part of Super Sunday here on Slow Motion Broadcasting and the plugs that go along with it, that will do it from me. Zippy, did you want to do the other plugs for Pit Road Productions as well, or?
Yeah, my apologies there, ladies and gentlemen. I'm forgetting that I haven't shared the screen for Ron, so he's kind of in the dark a little bit on that one. But if you want to see some sim drivers, well, sim racers fighting for a chance to drive a real car, ladies and gentlemen, we have the BIS F1600 Championship. We also have the BIS Radical Canada Cup. These guys generally run on Wednesday nights as well, 8:30 Eastern, and certainly it's been a very hard-fought, very spicy season so far. So if you want to check that out, that's Wednesday nights at 8:30 Eastern. You'll have the pleasure or displeasure of having me commentate on that, along with the team over at Pit Road Productions. And then again, we got this little decal up for you for the SMB. But I got to say, what an absolutely fantastic show. Ron, close us out, sir, before we head back for the SRFs.
Yeah, give us a little bit of time to do whatever we need to do between that and the Spec Racer Ford race coming up in a little bit. That's going to be a really good day of racing action, as it was here with the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors. Racing action that we usually expect, we had it and then some here at Zandvoort. But for this race broadcast of the 12th race of this Formula Ford Weekend Warriors season, that will just about do it. So for myself, Ron Maunz, and Daniel Zippy Salmon working with me in the commentary booth and also doing all the work in the virtual production hauler, I say thank you all so very much for watching. Have a great rest of your hour, and we'll see you with the Spec Racer Fords in a little bit. Take care, everybody.
I see a Budweiser. Go ahead and hold it up.
Yes. There's
that was
our
that was the
Budweiser.
biggest clue.
Yes, right
Doing
there.
it for Dale.
Man, it's so many gimmicks, right? I feel like they're making it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, a lot of people, you get polarizing opinions on DRS.
I know you guys know exactly what I'm talking about here, but sometimes the effort, it's all about the boys. You know, like, hey, you know, life sucks sometimes, and you need the boys.
iRacing kind of always has a tendency to kind of buff
Yes.
the new cars just a little bit. I'm not going to go on record saying it's because they want people to spend money on their platform and buy all the new
Conspiracy
content.
confirmed.
But
Yes.
but
We are live for the first time on Slow Motion Broadcasting with the FF Weekend Warriors. We're at Sebring this weekend. It's going to be a blast. I saw a little bit of rain here in the practice session, but we'll get to that here in 1 second. My name is Adam Thompson. I'm joined in the booth by Randall McGrew.
These three going right at it. We see you're getting really, really squirrely. There.
Oh, no!
Some contact. Oh no! Jurg and Antonio, the two Masters leaders, both with issues and now dropping down the order.
There's a dicing through the curbs. Our lead two. As that's Instaman just slossing it up the inside through McIntyre there. Beautifully done by the Icelandic driver as there's a big incident happened behind somewhere. Gonzaga losing a lot of places back.
Almost touching at that point. They're around there, heading into the closing stages of the track. Not quite there yet. Heading through what I'm calling the horseshoe, but let's not get into my drawing skills at this point. Nothing but clear track ahead of them at this point, so no one should be able to interfere in that battle. Side by side, nearly had contact there. That's going to put Kabanka on the inside for this next hairpin. This could be what decides it, and he's gone right on the outside, actually trying to cover off the car. I do wonder if Barry is going to be close enough to potentially slipstream. They've got 2 corners left to go. This is penultimate one now. Barry right up close, 0.3 of a second. I'm not sure it's going to be close enough, 0.2 of a second. He's got to keep his foot on that loud pedal. Catches a little bit of a curve, but has Kabanka done it? Barry going to the inside, and Kabanka gets it.